Hello, everyone. My name is Fernando Dominguez Pinuaga, and I am Vice President at SandboxAQ in one more of this series where we are interviewing CEOs from the companies from our strategic investment program. We have with us Michele Mosca, who's one of the pioneers in the quantum industry. He's been with the quantum field from academia, research, and the private areas for so long that everybody knows his name. Everybody owns so much to him on the quantum communication side, quantum security side, and even on the academia side as well. So, Michele, how are you doing this morning?
Well, thanks. Great to be here with you, Fernando.
Everybody knows about you. You can go any area of the quantum ecosystem. Everybody has heard of Michele Mosca as a professor from Waterloo University. Tell us, so at some point you decided to found and launch evolutionQ. Can
Yeah.
you tell the audience what evolutionQ is and what made you make that decision to move from the research side to the application side?
So Evolution Q, ultimately, we're about helping the world sort of safely embrace the new computational powers of quantum and AI and anything else that's coming. There's the defense side, in a sense, and uh, ultimately, maybe we'll get into that in more detail, but it's about creating the cryptographic resilience. So we have services and products to do that. Our services help people understand their vulnerability, their position, and their roadmap. And when in order to achieve cryptographic resilience in today's era, you need more cryptographic diversity and defense in depth than we did in the 90s when I started. And that's where our products come in. They're new, standards-based, certifiable, scalable software solutions that give us that cryptographic diversity we need. So that's one of our products is in fact software to enable quantum networks to provide some of that resilience. In a nutshell, the asks for help were getting too interesting to say no, and too much and too complicated to be able to do on my own, or me and my co-founder Norbert on our own. And it all sort of really came to a head when the CIO of Canada asked me to meet her, and ultimately asked me, what would you do if you were me? And she was interested in harnessing, the stronger grade of cryptography that quantum enabled to protect, Canadian government systems. So we started off as a services company, really trying to understand. We're always trying to meet the customer where they are and help them on that journey. And the product opportunities became apparent a few years after that when we started identifying the product gaps.
So you've seen a lot of change and transition in the last 10 years. And even we've seen the industries moving forward, the governments issuing executive orders and programs to try to have
Yeah.
all the defense agencies migrate and get ready. Let me ask you, you also have been running a survey for the last
Yeah.
years, the Quantum Threat Survey. That tell us more about that survey. What are the insights and how has the experts' opinion been changing for the last 5, 7, 8 years?
Yeah, the survey was really addressing one of the market needs to get a handle on, like, is this threat for real? Like, is it a one in a million thing? Is this 30 years away or 5 years away? And or like, what's the deal? And of course, academia's, our answer was we don't know, which is useless. Or the other answer is unless something unexpected happens, it'll be a long time. Well, that's also useless because we know something unexpected is it's always happening. So, how do you give risk people, business people, policy people a useful answer? They don't need certainty. And I kept updating it year after year. But I thought at one point, hey, why don't I ask several dozen of my colleagues around the world? This is a multifaceted answer. And so I asked them the same question, not when do you think it's going to happen and whatever, but what is the likelihood of breaking this code that we all depend on? And if you look at what they think today, it's gone up from, you know, maybe 1 to 5% chance in 5 years, but really low percent on the order of 1% to, you know, something up to 9 to 14%, like it's or 6 to 14% chance or something like that in 5 years, which is already a risk that absolutely must be mitigated. And it's in the 20s to 34% chance in 10 years, right? But we see that going up. It's kind of hovers and then goes nudges up, but over the last 6 years, it's sort of nudged up to these levels, which don't give us any certainty, but make it clear, go ahead, go to your board, go to your customers, go to your regulators and say, don't worry, there's only a 20% chance or 25% chance or 30 that our systems collapse systemically and without a game plan. Of course, nobody's going to say that. And this kind of report forces them to confront it and articulate how they're handling this, how they're managing this massive risk.
No, it's a great report, especially to look at the evolution of the report and how the experts that are really knowledgeable about the field respond and have been evolving their thinking about the threat. Um, can you share a little bit of who are you working with and what is the response from the field, from the banking ecosystem or the some of the governments that I know you're working with? If you can
Yeah.
share a few of the examples so the audience can really understand how is Michele and evolutionQ helping protect the data from those clients and partners.
So we've been informing people for over a decade, for actually 15 years, like you said. And in the early days, you talk to some of the largest banks in the world and the experts, and they would get it. They'd be like, yeah, we have a problem because we know it takes 10 to 15 years to migrate. And the problem back then was how do I communicate this to my C-suite, to the decision makers, so we can get the buy-in, the support to undergo this massive migration over the next 10, 15 years. And over the last 10, 15 years, it's moved from this sort of convincing people to think about this. Things like the NSA memo back in 2015 really brought this up a whole level in terms of awareness and importance. Because now you have the chief cryptologic agency in the United States and similarly in Europe saying if you want to sell to the government, you're going to have to migrate to post-quantum cryptography, to quantum safe cryptography. So it was a whole other level of awareness. And then people were moved from, okay, assessing their risk to, but what do I do about it? Improving the supply chain. So where we come in is in two different places fundamentally. One is we help people on that journey, right? We educate them.
Hmm.
So the services part of the company, um, which is where we started, uh, the risk assessments, the roadmaps, the advisory to help them on that journey. And what you realize when you're on that journey is we can't go back to the vulnerable state where we were. We have to build resilience. And we never architected for resilience. We never thought we needed the level of diversity we actually need back in the 90s when we started this journey. A smart mathematician anywhere could potentially pull the rug out from under us.
Hmm.
Given that we've increased the stakes tremendously, we don't just need security and hope for the best. We need resilience. So we need defense in depth and agility. Right? And that's where the exciting product opportunities that we decided to seize is in deploying scalable, interoperable, symmetric key infrastructure solutions, which again play alongside the public key methodologies to give us a sort of a sound and resilient foundation to the digital economy.
Can you help us describe the product to somebody that is not familiar with cybersecurity or IT communications?
Yeah, so like most of your IT security, you don't even know it's there. It just works,
Hmm.
right? But if you really step back and think about it, you're like, how is it possible that when I'm doing auto updates every single day, invisibly in the background, that the software that I'm downloading and installing on my devices is coming from the legitimate vendors? How do I know it's not malware? Well, cryptography, right? The public key infrastructure is what allows you to do that. Provides you the integrity, the authenticity, so you know who you're talking to, you know it hasn't changed, and the confidentiality wherever you need it. And now the adversaries are astronomically more capable and motivated, right? We didn't even call it cybersecurity in the 90s, but now there's a whole ecosystem of threat actors of different varieties with a sophisticated set of tools to come after us, augmented by AI. So we're not in the 90s anymore. And so we have to architect for not just security, but resilience. And so our solutions will sort of be ultimately, it's another layer of protection on top of the ones we're already using. And it's really uh, it's an analog of the way we protected communications in the 80s was somebody with a briefcase would manually exchange or install secret keys at the two different endpoints. This is the way like Caesar did it like thousands of years ago, right? What we've done is we've taken those old school methods of exchanging keys out of band and using symmetric key cryptography, which is an older form of cryptography. The public key methodologies, they're really powerful and exciting, but there's more structure to them. So they're generally a little more susceptible to code breaking. But the symmetric key methods are generally considered more long-term secure. So we took those old building blocks and re-architected them with the know-how, 21st century know-how, I would say, and with 21st century use cases in mind, so we can in scalable ways enable these end-to-end encryption keys to be much, much more available than they ever were to protect, again, not everything, but our more critical systems can now have this extra layer of assurance. It's kind of like multi-factor authentication now, right?
Okay.
So there's a full spectrum of use cases with different risk tolerances, and we're giving you kind of the equivalent, the MFA type equivalent, but for our cryptography, our key establishment.
Perfect. So if I paraphrase, we all our society uses the internet every day, and that infrastructure is secure, or we think it's secure. Most of the applications and the data that we share, one of the fundamentals of it is encryption. And encryption today, there's a threat. So what? Tell me more. Help me understand a
Yeah,
little more about that threat that you are trying to protect
yeah.
against.
So it was a threat we always knew was in principle there, because with the public key infrastructure, you do have there's more mathematical structure to enable, because it seems impossible. Like, how is it possible that you have a public conversation that people are listening to, and at the end of it, you distill a key, a secret key? It's possible, but there's assuming some mathematics problem is really
Hmm.
hard. And, we said, okay, well, do you guys know how to break it? No, like nobody knew how to break it. And we had sort of arguments for why we think it's hard. Well, it turns out it isn't. Peter Shor in 1994 figured out that a quantum computer could easily break these codes.
Hmm.
The stakes are much higher now. We can't assume adversaries are going to tell us, and we can't assume we're going to know about it in advance. So we know quantum will break today's public key cryptography, and that's just a big wake up call that this is not just, in theory possible to break code. It happens. It's happened several times, and we don't need to be afraid. We just need to be ready. And readiness is not that hard.
Hmm.
We need business leaders and policymakers to say, yeah, we want resilience. Like, security is great, but yes, we want resilience. Please tell us how you're achieving resilience for us. So that if a smart mathematician in some hostile place can break these codes, they don't own us, right? We're not at their mercy. They can't take down our infrastructure or threaten the sovereignty of our nation and so on. Explain to me how we're resilient. And the technical people we know how to solve it. If we have the endorsement, if we have the sponsorship to achieve resilience, we know how to do diversity, defense in depth, and agility.
So the solution is there. So what should if I am the CEO of a large bank or a telecommunications company or the president of one of the top nations in the world, and I keep on hearing about this quantum threat, but I can't get to understand it. What would you tell them? Where should they start?
Yeah,
Like, okay, I need to protect my
yeah.
nation, my country, my data, but I don't know where to start.
So I think they need a high level assessment of the risk. So step one, what does it mean if these codes are broken without advance warning and actionable by adversaries? Okay. And then you can start putting a probability of that happening, but it's not zero. It's more than 1%. It's substantial. When you take the probability times the impact, it will worry you tremendously. And then you say, okay, how do we reduce the risk so it's a recoverable one? What are the options? Right? And then you can decide how much to invest in reducing the risk. But ultimately, the solution will consist of some degree of it. So first of all, you have to manage the visit, because I think we're becoming aware of vendor concentration risk, right, and supply chain risk. But what's been invisible to date is the fact that we're all using the same cryptography. So
Mm-hmm.
it's great they have 3 different vendors with different product names, but if they're all using the same cryptography, you still have that tremendous concentration risk. But it's kind of gone invisible. So we have to make that visible, right?
And as I understand, it's not an easy project. It's something that will take years to get ready
Yeah.
for, and years that we do not have yet.
Yeah, and that worries me because um, you don't want to have to trade off being, risking being too late with doing a bad job. Because if you rush rebuilding the foundation of your home or your city, it's gonna be vulnerable to mundane, like not super sophisticated attacks. And so that's not a trade-off we want to have to make. You know, increase, reducing the chance of catastrophic, collapse versus, uh, reducing the chance of, everyday, more day-to-day sort of cyber attacks that we're facing already. We don't want to have to choose. So the only way to deal with this is to be proactive and start mitigating the threat with sufficient time so you can do responsible, robust migration before you face sort of these new attacks.
evolutionQ is working with one of the most ambitious projects run by the ESA, European Space Agency, to connect multiple cities worldwide through quantum resilient and quantum safe networks. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and specifically what makes evolutionQ unique that the European Space Agency has chosen you to run this project?
Yeah, so this is together with partners in the space sector, fiber-based quantum cryptography and others. So we designed and architected a software approach, a software platform that will take different cryptography mechanisms from different vendors and stitch them together into one end-to-end platform. And that includes satellite-based communications and fiber-based communications. So we anticipated this, we architected the solution, we implemented the solution. So we're way ahead of everyone else in terms of both conceiving and implementing what was ultimately needed if you wanted to leverage satellite-based quantum communication in a broader network. So we were, well positioned to deliver what was needed because we anticipated it um, years earlier.
Thank you for clarifying that. And this reminds me of sometimes if I'm the head of IT of a major corporation and I'm listening to the podcast, I'm thinking, okay, I might need Evolution Q come and check with my team, but I already have Palo Alto Networks, Splunk, Snyk, Tanium, CrowdStrike, all these cybersecurity providers. Why do I need one more?
Now, these vendors, they can like there's the existing secure solutions, public key infrastructure, public key cryptography, that they can mostly do on their own by updating their libraries and so on. But the symmetric key infrastructure, this is a new category.
Mhm.
They don't have that, right? They need to get it from somebody, and we're the ones they'd be getting it from. So we're integrating with your existing vendors, right? So what ultimately the business leaders, the policy leaders need to say to their vendors, we need cryptographic resilience. Are you using symmetric key? Are you leveraging symmetric key infrastructure to protect against unexpected attacks on public key methods? And then they'll figure it out, right? And they'll decide whether to buy or build and so on. But we've pioneered this new category, and more of them are choosing to work with us to help them deliver this functionality, this capability, this resilience to their end customers.
Yeah, and we see that that's something that is going to happen anyway. The standardization and the
Yeah,
compliance perspective in the field is sooner or later, regulatory fields are asking for it. So you
yeah,
better start that work earlier.
yeah,
Um, I have one last question is if I am an investor and you got me a hello here and I have infinite money, so
yeah,
I can give you $1 billion
yeah.
next week. How will you spend them to protect the world?
I would accelerate the deployment of symmetric key infrastructure, right? Because there's always a chicken and egg. Because we talk to people, they're like, "Yeah, I want it, but I want to get it like now through my existing vendors and so on, and it's not there yet at that level of maturity. And so with that level of investment, we can accelerate the maturing and deployment of symmetric key infrastructure so it's more readily available to more customers. So we'll be able to meet them where they are faster. So we could get a more resilient infrastructure faster by integrating these solutions with more platforms and making it, again, more available to a wider range of use cases sooner.
Thank you, Michele. We're about to go. I just wanted to say thank you and ask you for a last message that you would like to send to the audience before we finish.
Yeah, I think we're in an exciting time. I mean, there will be a phase transition as the demand, as the need to be resilient goes up, and the possibility to be resilient becomes easier. There'll be this flip suddenly, and we're all excited about that. I guess it's really important that we don't need to worry, we don't need to fear the code breaking capabilities of quantum and AI because we know how to tame them, right? And we just need to, whatever role we're in, whether we're a purchaser, a policymaker, an investor, a regulator, and so on, just ask about people's cryptographic resilience posture.
Perfect. Thank you, Michele. And I'll see you in Waterloo, I guess, or
Yeah,
New
looking
York.
forward to that.
Thank you for joining us
Yeah,
today.
thanks very much.